All right, so the day after Christmas, Jonathan needed to get his haircut. He had been working super hard since Thanksgiving and hadn't had the chance to get to his barber to get his haircut. So he was off on Christmas Day. He was off the day after Christmas, but his barber was also off the day after Christmas. So as we were out and about, he said, okay, well, let me see if I can Google if there are any barbershops near me, near where we were. And whenever he Googled it, nothing came up. So anyway, we were at Chuck E. Cheese with Luna and we were walking out. And on our way to leave this sort of bigger complex where there are lots of shops, he spotted a barbershop. He went into the barbershop and thankfully he was able to get seen as a walk-in because there was a cancellation. So as we were leaving, that's whenever he mentioned that he had Googled that barbershop. But it was like, hey, man, what luck that we were able to find it because whenever he did that search, nothing had come up. So that got my wheels turning because, of course, Jonathan speaks Spanish. And whenever he Googled that barbershop, of course, he Googled it in Spanish. So he wrote in peluqueria. So my wheels were turning and I was like, hey, what will happen if I Google the barbershop and put in barbershop? Will this barbershop specifically show up? Sure enough, it did. So that took me on this whole rabbit hole around inclusive SEO, specifically from the standpoint of people who speak different languages. This is especially important because the population, particularly in the US, is definitely increasing quite a bit in terms of Spanish speakers. One other thing to note, like this barbershop was fully equipped and prepared to serve Spanish speakers. There were Spanish-speaking barbers in there. A good number of them, I heard Jonathan speaking to them while he was in there, explaining what it was that he wanted with his haircut. The issue wasn't that they weren't equipped to serve this market. They just hadn't done it from an SEO standpoint. So I want us to dive into this topic a little further because I want to make sure that you as a business aren't missing out on this opportunity. So I brought in an expert in SEO who's done a lot of work with clients on multi-language SEO, and we chatted about other SEO tactics and tools from an inclusion standpoint that will really help you do a better job of attracting the people that you want, the people who are already looking for you, and the people who have the problem that your business solves. So after this short break, you're going to hear my fascinating discussion that's super actionable with Sarah Moon. Did you know that most businesses only use 20% of their data? That's like reading a book with most of the pages torn out or paying for a coffee that's just 1/5 full. Point is, you miss a lot unless you use HubSpot. Their customer platform gives you access to the data you need to grow your business. The insights trapped in emails, call logs, and transcripts, all that unstructured data that makes all the difference. Because when you know more, you grow more. And when you get a full cup of coffee, you can do more too. But I digress. Visit HubSpot.com today. All right. Hey, Sarah, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure. All right. I'm really excited about this discussion. But before we get too deep into it, tell the people, who are you and what do you do?
That's the hard question. I'm Sarah Moon. And I like to say I am a marketing consultant, and I specialize kind of in organic marketing that is on properties you own. So that means your website, your newsletter, things like that. That's really where I shine. A lot of people know me in terms of search engine optimization expertise. I always tell people that is a piece of the overall marketing picture. And that is one of the tools in the toolkit, but that is not the only tool that we use, and it shouldn't be the only tool you use. We're looking at a big picture and using that as one of the levers that we pull.
Absolutely.
So I'm located in Portland, Oregon, and I've been doing this on my own for almost 16 years now. So I have seen some stuff.
I can imagine. Well, I know you have a bigger footprint, but we're going to talk about SEO today. That's one of the reasons that I reached out to you. We were chatting back and forth on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you said really intrigued me. You said, SEO forces us to acknowledge your audience in a very serious way. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, I actually, I'm glad you remembered that I said that because that sounds pretty good, doesn't
It
it?
sure is.
But it really does, because when we talk about what people are typing in, so SEO stands for search engine optimization. And what that means is really using, in this case, what's on your website to help get your website in front of more people when they type something into the search engine. And keeping in mind that about 90% of internet experiences start with a search. And that's something that is really, I think we almost don't realize we're searching. Actually, I don't think
Yes,
I know.
yes.
If we ask Siri a question, that's looking at the search engine. If we
Mm-hmm.
type something into the browser bar, that's a search. There's all
Mm-hmm.
these moments that we have throughout our day where we're searching for something. And when we think about that and we think about our audiences, one of my big frustrations in marketing is how we kind of boil our audiences down to almost like stereotypes. We talk about like, ideal client avatars. It's almost like this person that doesn't exist. But when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about SEO, we have to understand their real language that they're using. Like if we're not using their language, they will never find us. So that means we
Yeah.
need to really think about, their emotions, their hopes, their frustrations, all of those things, and understand that the language they use is likely not our language. So we're almost having to
Yeah.
translate what they need and help them find the solutions that we offer. And so that really requires a lot of deep thought and like iterative understanding and listening
Yeah.
to really do excellent SEO. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, a lot of people who've had experience with search engine optimization, they've had an experience that looks like this, where someone goes and finds a bunch of keywords for them.
Yeah.
And then those keywords are kind of put on their website somewhere, and they hope that they get traffic. And I actually think it's a really inappropriate way to do SEO, especially if you're a consultant, a coach, a service provider. What you really need to do is answer, like, what does my audience need?
Yeah.
And then you create the content for that audience, and then you match the keywords to that intention and that content. So you kind of do that part last. So
Yeah.
you're really centering that audience. And that makes that to me, that's, you see the real difference. Yeah.
Yeah. What you were saying there really reminds me of so within the framework that I have for inclusive marketing, the second component of that is all about customer intimacy. And what you're saying is,
Mm,
from an SEO perspective, it's really about having a deep degree of customer intimacy that will give you insight into what people are searching for, what their intention is, how they say it, and then creating that type of content and going from there. Interestingly enough, like I find that there's a lot of times that brands might have very specific things that they're thinking about whenever they're going after keywords, but they're not always the practical things that people are looking for.
right.
And that might even go through like website architecture and things like that. But the example that I want to give, I was talking to my sister who is gluten-free like me. And whenever you're gluten-free, you have to basically go to the website of the restaurant in advance to know if
Yeah.
you can eat the things.
Yep. I get that. My husband can't eat soy. So,
It's important, right? So,
yep.
like you were saying, 90% of internet activity happens with search. I'd be curious to see, like, even not just internet, beyond that, for like in person businesses, how much of that is beginning with search these days, too. So, the reason why I brought that up is because she's
Mhm.
often frustrated whenever she goes to the restaurant's website and she can't find any information for gluten free. So then she has to go back out to the search engine and type the name of the restaurant and then the words gluten free. And then in a lot of
Yes.
instances, that information isn't even on the website. We get the information from some gluten free or allergen friendly focused website that has profiled the restaurant. So listen to little things about what people are going to be searching for, and that often it's not available.
It's really common where actually what we call in the biz user generated content is more helpful than the content that's been created by the company. And again, that's just not listening to what people need. And you
Yeah.
can eavesdrop a lot on our audiences. I mean, the internet is amazing for that, but also what people call and ask us. And, I had a client who's an attorney, and we were working on some SEO strategy, and I said, "Hey, go talk to your legal assistant who answers the phone and ask them what the questions are that they get." because I bet that's going to match up to the keywords we need to optimize for.
Absolutely.
And guess what? They absolutely did.
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Okay. All right. So one of these kind of user generated experiences is one of the reasons why I started talking to you about this. So as we kind of frame this up, what is multilingual SEO? This has become so important to me because my husband speaks Spanish. So I'm thinking about these types of things a lot more, as he'll search for things in Spanish and I search for things in English. And it might be the same thing, but we often get different results.
It's like you're experiencing a completely different internet, right? Yeah. It's really interesting. Now, I always have to say the caveat, like multilingual SEO is something I have worked on, but it is not my area of specialty. So there are people who this is all they do. I'm fortunate enough to have clients in other countries and who serve very diverse communities. So it's something I've had to get up to speed on. So there are lots and lots of nuances to this that are technical that I won't get into. But the core crux of the concept behind multilingual SEO is how you're going to convert your website into serving people who are searching in multiple languages. So in your case, someone may be looking for, a service or a business searching in English, and someone standing next to them may be searching for the same kind of business or service in Spanish. And what happens if you are serving people who are speaking multiple languages, if you haven't thought about this, only one of those language speakers will be served. So you're actually missing out on an audience. And so that's it at its most simple, is that, and I want to actually say this is not the same as doing something like adding a Google Translate widget to your website. That is not what we're talking about. That does not help people find you. And it used to be very common, but I still see it. And it's not going to do what you think it's going to do, unfortunately. So
it doesn't, and you never really know. You're leaving yourself up to chance when you're having Google translate your carefully curated copy. Like if you spend thousands of dollars on a copywriter and then you have Google Translate, it's not going to be the same. Just real quickly, so does the Google translated is it that with that widget, it doesn't actually show up anywhere in search engine? It doesn't really, if you're on the page. Okay.
Yeah, it literally doesn't exist.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Good to know, right? Okay. So why would you say this is something that brands should be thinking about? Because somebody might say, you know what, my brand isn't, my business is in English, right? Like we operate in English. Is there a downside to not thinking about this? Or is there a tipping point where people should start to be thinking about this?
Oh, that's a great question. I think there's a few different points at which you want to be really serious about thinking about this. For example, if you just know that you are in in an area, like a neighborhood, a region, etc., where there are multiple language speakers, if that's the culture of your region, then I need to really think about this seriously. For example, I have a client who is incredibly cool. She's a farmer, actually, who's running a food justice campaign.
Nice.
So that incorporates farmers, residents of the community, volunteers, schools, a whole bunch of some community services entities. And some people speak English, some people speak Spanish, again, across all of those categories. And so for her, it makes sense to optimize her site, especially for the program that she's offering, both the volunteer and the recipient side, to definitely have that optimized to attract people, regardless of whether they're searching in English or Spanish, for what they're offering. So it makes a lot of sense for her. I think most people who should be working on multilingualizing, if that's a word, their SEO probably know, even if they haven't thought about it. If you have a lot of customers who are not native English speakers,
right,
you probably have noticed that.
Yeah.
Would be where I would really kind of make that decision.
Yeah.
It's probably honestly in the way our culture has become more and more vibrant.
Yeah.
It's probably something we should all be thinking about, especially if we do have competency in multiple languages.
Yeah, I was doing some research on our local area. I live right outside of Tampa, and Tampa is 26% Latino or something like that. Like we're already at this point. Yeah. So it just seems natural that sometimes
everyone in Tampa,
right? Like we should be doing that's 1 in 4 people, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we're talking about multilingual SEO, What does that actually look like?
What is,
you know what I mean?
what does it look like?
Yeah.
Right, let me roll up my sleeves.
Right? Because sometimes I imagine it could be super complex, and other times it could be, depending on the type of business, super simple, right?
So I think we can keep it pretty simple for most businesses,
Okay.
especially if we're talking about bricks and mortar and local type businesses who are really the ones who are probably on the forefront of wondering, like, hey, I'm seeing who's walking by, like I'm having interactions with people, but you can keep it pretty simple. There's some really, really wonderful tools out there that make it a lot easier to properly multilingualize your website, including doing the SEO side. So one I recommend a lot because it's super affordable compared to a lot of the tools out there is a tool called Weglot, which is a funny name. But Weglot is basically an extension you can add to pretty much any website that allows you to input translations, both of what's on your page, but also of what's called your metas.
Okay.
So these are your page titles and your page descriptions.
Okay.
And then it also adds a proper file structure. So Google understands that there's a second language structure to your website.
Okay.
So it does a lot of the hard work where we used to have to do all that manually. Does a ton of the hard work for you. And so that does require having, a translator, right? We don't want to have those funky Google translations.
No.
But it even allows you to do things like replace media. So if, say, you were a restaurant who served people who spoke multiple languages, you could upload, say, a PDF menu of your specials in both languages, and you could tell the website that, okay, if this person is accessing the Spanish version of the site, they're going to get the Spanish PDF.
Yeah.
Or if you have an infographic, you'll have the Spanish version of the infographic. So there's lots of it. It used to be so hard.
Right.
And now it's so much more accessible.
Yeah. I love how technology makes inclusive marketing that much more accessible these days.
Yeah. I mean, when I had a larger team, we used to do a lot of websites. I remember before there were these tools out there, we worked with a client in Chile who had audience that spoke English, Spanish, and French.
Wow.
And the cost associated with that development of that site and multilingualizing the entire site was very, very, very high. It was inaccessible. This was a publishing company, so they could afford it, but it was still it's like developing 3 websites in one website. And it was very expensive and very inaccessible. And now, there's there's multiple reasonably priced tools where you can do that. So it used to be, you would have to, upload the media multiple times and it was awful. And so I understand why people just thought it was inaccessible. But now, we can, use a tool like Weglot. I have no association with them. I'm not like a brand partner or anything. It's just, I think it's an excellent tool. And it even allows us to write the image descriptions, which is an accessibility issue. So again, it's adds the SEO component. We can multilingualize it, and then we can have accessibility that is multilingualized as well. So it's actually making everything much more welcoming and inviting to people who are experiencing lots of different sort of realities.
Yeah. Okay, I've got another podcast recommendation for you. It's Augmenters, hosted by Julie Meyer and Jimmy Edgerton, and it's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. So on this show, Julie and Jimmy dive into mentoring and explore ways to augment and refresh the mentoring environment. They're using 8 core principles that weave relevant spirit guides and diverse guests, and Julie and Jimmy use a lot of humor and practical tips to help mentors and mentees get further, faster together. There's so many great episodes to tune into for this show, but one that you might find especially interesting is their latest episode, number 120, Mentoring Across Gender, Men as Allies and Mentors. Listen to Augmenters wherever you get your podcasts. So one of the things that I was thinking about as we think through okay, who should be doing this? When should you be doing it? I was thinking about the customer experience, which is, I'm all about that. So more and more we're starting to see brands, particularly on YouTube. And YouTube, it's much easier now. You can upload one video and have it available in multiple languages. You can do dubbing, you can do the SRT files.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking through the experience from a business standpoint, right? If you have people who are engaging with your YouTube content in other languages, they might be like, oh, well, what next, right? Like if they want to learn more and then they go to your English only website, it can be a bit of a tricky thing like, oh, okay, wait, right? So it's nice to be able to have that degree of continuity as you're thinking through the customer experience if people are going to be finding you in different ways.
Oh, absolutely. You could link in that YouTube video to the Spanish version of, say, your opt-in. And how wonderful and inviting would that be? You know, and YouTube, I'm a huge fan of YouTube for SEO, by the way, but how inviting would that be to someone who they've used, you know, the Spanish captions, and then they see there's a link where they can get a download in their language and go straight to the Spanish version of your site. I mean, that's where where you're just creating a customer experience. It's like, yeah, I am welcome here. Like, I want to be part of this brand story.
Right.
So it's, it's a good thing to do for the world, but it's also really smart business.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Okay. The original reason that I reached out to you was all about like, my husband was looking for the haircut. He typed in peluqueria. Nothing popped up. I later on typed in barbershop and the place that we were standing right in front of us popped up, right? And so I'm imagining this is probably a very common thing that brick and mortar businesses don't know about. What should they do to even do something super simple as making sure that they show up in search when people are looking for something in their area?
I think that is such a great example because when you looked up that barbershop, did they have a Google business profile?
I'm just looking at, did it pop up on the red little oval near you? So maybe they did. I'm not positive. Do you have to have a profile to show up in that little, those little pinpoints that it puts on for you?
Yeah. It's like I'm basically a map.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you're a local business and you don't have a Google business profile, fix that right now because it is one of the best things you can do to help people near you find you. And also one of the cool things, so we are talking about this real proximity-based thing. If someone is, in your neighborhood and looking, like there's a great pizza truck right by my house, right? If someone is looking for pizza, I would want them to be able to find the pizza truck. They do have a Google business profile. But also you can, in your Google business profile, say what languages are spoken, but you can also even add a Spanish name, in your profile to make it clear.
Okay.
The crazy thing to me is that Google doesn't understand if you're searching in the English version of it doesn't translate, which tells you probably how bad their translation system is. And so that's where if I were that business and I was in a community where there are a lot of Spanish speakers and I had a Spanish speaking barber, I would absolutely make sure that I had a Spanish version of my website. I would absolutely add that there's Spanish-speaking employees, and I would really seriously considering also adding some Spanish language to my Google business profile as well to try to capture some of those folks who are searching in the other language. It would be easy. It's like a 20-minute job,
Okay.
It's not a huge task. Yeah.
You bring up a good point, and I'm curious, what level of proficiency does a brand need to have in Spanish, for example, or whatever language to be able to serve? Or does it really depend the type of business that you have? So maybe if it's a SaaS business, a software, you're not interacting directly, maybe you don't need it. Or maybe you need a customer service person. Like if you're, like you get on the phone line, press 2 for Spanish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a certain degree of baked in support that you need to have before you start thinking about this so that you can effectively serve people?
I think it probably really depends on the level of customer contact you have.
Okay.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I have a client who's an English speaker in Japan, has lived there for many years. She speaks very good Japanese. She does her business in English because it takes a really long time to be really, really, really fluent in especially in business Japanese, which has its own nuances. And she has a few bits of Japanese in her website so that people searching in Japanese can find her. But she also is very clear, like yes, she has actually a discussion on her website about the level of fluency and business competence she has in that language, so that she's setting expectations. So I think it is very much like a balancing act. And I liked the way she handled that particular situation. I like it a lot because it feels compassionate.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that people are most wondering, they don't want to feel like they're baited and switched, right? So they're going Spanish, 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 and then they get to a place and it's like all English and they can't continue. And it's like the customer experience isn't one that's gonna be a stop.
Bad.
Yeah. Okay. One other thing I want to circle back to, you were saying that there were a lot of costs years ago when you were working with this client in Chile, but now there are more accessible tools. So it's much more, I guess you would say, affordable for people to do these types of things. Okay.
Yeah. So the tool that I mentioned, like I said, it's just one that I quite like, which is called Weglot. It allows you to do this. It allows you to write the SEO metas. It allows you to write the special descriptions of the images in another language. It allows you to translate up to 2,000 languages or 2,000 words for free. So if you're, say, like that barbershop, your website is probably covered by a free tier. Mm-hmm. And, then if you're, sort of your typical, a law firm, a financial planner, a consultant, something like that, you can translate 10,000 words for like $15-$18.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, it's a low cost considering the way you're expanding your potential audience, and also just that you're doing kind of the right thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really, really smart move for folks to really think about, to be quite honest. There's other tools out there. It's just that's the one that I found clients find the easiest to use. So that's why I like it.
Yeah. Do you have any watch outs or like common mistakes that you've seen people make as it relates to like really trying to engage people who speak other languages from an SEO standpoint?
Oh, actually, yes, that's a great question. This is actually, a lot of it is actually technical issues where people have the translation, for example, the Google Auto Translate buttons. And there's other ones out there that are of varying qualities. Those do nothing for you. Don't do that. Yeah. It doesn't work. It's not effective.
Right.
I see that a lot in the nonprofit sector because they assume it's going to be very expensive. But also what I'll see is people will say, set up a whole second website in the other language.
Yeah.
That's very expensive, but it's also confusing.
Yeah.
It's confusing to Google. They see two websites are kind of the same and it's kind of weird. And there's actually a specific URL structure you're supposed to use if you do that.
Yeah.
And it's really more related to people in different countries. So you might have like Amazon.fr and Amazon.es are for France and Spain, not French and Spanish.
Got it. Yeah.
No, so you can totally see the confusion.
Yes.
So yeah, it's that kind of stuff where actually it's overly complicated. And it doesn't help your SEO. It doesn't bring in the right audience because it's just frankly just weird and confusing.
Yeah. There's one other thing that I found. It's probably not an SEO issue, but I was doing an audit of some SaaS websites or of some e-commerce websites. And a lot of them it seemed like some type of widget where it would translate the site for you, or you could select which language you want. And so if you select the language you want, the language would change, but if the images would still be in English. So it would be like everything changed, but like, the writing that they have on their imagery didn't. So I was just like,
yeah, that's sort of doing it halfway. And, if you're going to invest the time, make, those infographics or those pricing tables or those, whatever the thing is, go all in, like communicate it fully and it will make a difference because it's also, again, confusing. Like, why would you have an image on a Spanish language version of a page with a, English description? Like that doesn't actually make sense.
Yeah.
And so again, that it could actually be harming the Spanish version of your site in the eyes of Google, which is let alone the problems with the actual humans, which is to me more important.
For sure. Okay. So we talked about mistakes that you see. What would you recommend as best practices for people who want to engage here?
Awesome. I love this. So some of the best practices, one, know who your audience is. So I'm actually going to step way back. I know everyone expects me to just suddenly start talking about techie stuff, but step way back and really think about not just who you talk to, but who you could potentially be talking to. So really understand them. And also, if you have people in your audience who are speaking multiple languages, there may be different information that audience A and audience B needs. So that's also something to keep in mind, and maybe not, like, you just, until you ask the question, you don't know. So that's important just to think about. So once you have that kind of narrowed down, what I recommend also, and this is something that when I worked with that lovely person who has the food justice program, there is often lingo or terms or whatever that will be used in context in one language that don't make sense in the other language.
Yeah.
So what is really important is sitting down and almost making a glossary of the terms that you're using. So when you go to do the translation, you have some, even if the words aren't the same, you have some standardized context. And that's really important. And I hope that makes sense, because it's literally an excellent process to actually be like, when we talk about this in English, when we, speak about it in Spanish, this is the term we use. So then you've standardized.
Yeah, that helps. I did an episode with a translation team my translation team. And one of the things that we talked about it's kind of like creating your brand guidelines, but for that particular language. So that helps you, because one of the things that we found was that a lot of times whenever there was a brand that we were working with that was creating things in English, and then they were just sending it off for the translation, but they weren't creating things in English thinking about how this would translate or if it would translate. So using, I think, idioms or cutesy references and how they would say things in English that there's just no way to do it in the other language, are things to be thinking about if you're going to be localizing.
You'd really, and then even something as small, like, also the other thing is to pay attention to the details.
Yeah.
Because, for example, when you're localizing something for another language, there's something called a URL slug. So that's the after the slash. So, it might be like, about Dash Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, there may be slightly different language that would be normal or typical that you want to use for the other page. You may not want to do a direct translation. And again, it's like that kind of system of really thinking through what is the glossary at all of those different touch points. So that's really what you want to think about, even, your URL slugs, your headlines, your SEO metas, your SEO descriptions, all of that stuff. You want to be really thinking about, like, what is the appropriate language for this audience, not just the direct translation, and make sure that all those touch points feel really consistent and not like weird.
Yeah, totally get that. Totally get that. Okay. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you and your work?
So you can visit me at sarahmoon.net. I just did finally, after 15 years, acquire the .com. So go ahead and punch in the sarahmoon.com too.
Nice.
This is like the most exciting thing that's happened to me in years.
It's a big deal.
So that's where you can hang out with me. What I would love to invite anyone to do is to just join my newsletter and hang out and see if there's things you can learn about marketing strategy and trying to navigate this really noisy, busy world that we're all living in. And you can do that at hey.sarahmoon.net. And that's really the best place to get to know me. You can hit reply. I always answer. And I'm always inviting people into my world.
It's a good newsletter. I'm on it. I've been on it for a little while, and I really enjoy your Friday messages. So yeah, definitely get on it
every Friday for 5 years now. It's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. We're just wrapping up here. Want to switch gears slightly. Can you tell me about a time where a brand made you feel like you belonged?
That is a really good question. So I actually have mine is goofy. This is a goofy story. And if you've read my newsletter, you've probably heard this story before.
That's good.
So over the last few years, I've always ridden bikes, but I've gotten really into riding bikes in the last few years. And I keep acquiring bicycles. It's a whole problem. Folks, don't start riding bikes. It gets very expensive. And so I bought a really fancy bike last year. And I had the hardest time. I wanted to buy a fancy bike. I had a very hard time buying a fancy bike. Not because it was too expensive, but because I was not welcomed in places where they had fancy bikes. There's a certain stereotype among
Ooh.
bike shops of what a cyclist looks like, which tends to be like a skinny white dude. So I kept going to these bike shops and getting steered towards like these cheesy little hybrid bikes, which is not, I wanted a serious road bike. So I was getting so frustrated. I'm like, I guess I'm just not going to get the bike. And on a whim, I stopped into a bike shop that's sort of near me that I had heard was really snobby. And I went in and like, I had probably never felt so listened to as a customer. I explained what I wanted. I mentioned the type of
Wow.
gearing I had on my one of my other bikes that I really liked. They looked up the geometry. So that's basically the shape of the bike of my bike that I loved, and helped find another bike in the shop that had a similar geometry so it would be comfortable. They found one with the kind of gearing that I was familiar with. And I was never mansplained to once. It was like, and then I bought the bike, bought a more expensive bike than I planned on. And I thanked them. I said, really, it's like the first time I've gone to a bike shop, I felt really welcomed. And they're like, no, we really want more customers like you to come in here. Like people who are excited, and like, we want women to come in here. And it was like all these dudes, like it was an all dude, and they were like mountain bike dudes.
Yeah.
And so it was such a remarkable experience because they were like, no, we're so happy that you came in, because bicycling has a reputation for looking like a certain thing. And that's really bad for our industry. And it was just, and so now I go there all the time. Like it's one of my favorite places in town. But it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh, we're kind of together because we all like the same thing. And it doesn't matter that I'm not like one of these dudes. Like they just are like, let's talk about bikes because bikes are great.
Yeah.
And it's a dorky story. It's kind of one of my favorites because it's an industry that is so, when you walk in, people size you up right away without even talking to you. And those guys knew that that is a way to not sell something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I thought was really impressive.
That's a wonderful story. It makes total sense because I think that happens in so many.
Is that the first like bike story you've gotten?
Yeah, but it's a fantastic one. I loved it. I loved it. Thanks so much for sharing. Okay. Any parting words of wisdom? Because we covered a lot of ground here. Any parting words of wisdom for marketers and business leaders who want to get started engaging more customers who speak different languages than the one that they primarily operate in?
So this is my advice in general. If you want to engage more customers, sit down and decide what you want to be known for. Like make that decision. That isn't a very purposeful thing that a lot of people have skipped doing. If you do that, then you can incorporate this multilingual thing. You can incorporate, great SEO strategies. You can incorporate great content strategies. But if you go into this without that real clarity on what do I want to be known for, it's going to be hard. And I hate hard. So do that first.
Very good. Sarah, this has been so much fun and really insightful. Thanks so much for stopping by and sort of demystifying this for us, this topic.
Thank you.
Sarah had so many great things to share, and I've already started applying lessons learned from this as I'm engaging and interacting with their clients, and they are seeing great success with this strategy as well. So I'm curious for you, what are your thoughts on multi-language SEO and this component of inclusive marketing? Have you thought about it? Have you incorporated it into your strategy? Do you see an area where you could be incorporating this into your strategy? We're going to be covering more SEO in later episodes on how you can bake inclusion into your strategy there, but this was a great entry point. If you found value out of this episode, I would so appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review for it in your podcast player of choice. And then go and share this episode with your friends, network, and your colleagues. All of these actions really do go a long way towards helping more people discover the show. And I like to think that means that more consumers will feel seen, supported, and like they belong. What's not to love about that? One other question for you. Are you getting the Inclusion and Marketing newsletter? If not, really, what are you even doing? Each week, I send tips, stories, insights, and other information to help you attract and retain a diverse customer base while you are growing your business. Go to inclusionandmarketing.com/newsletter to get signed up. I'll also drop a link to that for you in the show notes. Until next time, remember, everyone deserves to have a place where they belong. Let's use our individual and collective power to ensure more people feel like they do. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you soon.